Welcome to the Daily Dev Talk with me, Adrian Nantchev, where we explore and share experiences, stories, and lessons 7 days a week from across the games industry, helping you make the best game you can. Stay tuned for today's episode. Good morning, Overload Nation. Welcome to another episode of Daily Dev Talk, where I talk to game developers across the world, bringing you experiences, stories, and lessons 7 days a week. Today, I'm joined with Simon Bachmann from Robotility to talk about his first game, or their first game, Halfway. Simon, tell us about yourself first.
Right. Hi, thank you for having me. Let's start with myself. I started working on games like 15 years ago as a trainee at a company called Reactor Media back then. And in this company, we developed massive multiplayer online games. The one we actually started with was Neocron, which was a first-person shooter MMO released in 2002, I think, which is like a mix-up from Deus Ex and with a massive multiplayer backend behind it. And from there on, I kept on working in the game industry, mainly at the same company, going from artist trainee to lead artist, and then afterwards, after a short break, I worked as a producer on several games. And then after the company went bankrupt in 2012, I decided to go independent, and that's where I am now with Robotality since 2013. Yeah.
That's quite a journey. So 10 years in the industry and then since 2012, independent owned studio.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Was that for any specific reason or just creativity?
Actually, it was a once in a life chance I got when the company Reactor went bankrupt in 2012. I got an invention to make a proposal to a fund to start an independent company, but I had to do a business plan and stuff like that. And I was already thinking about going independent, and that was like, okay, that's the perfect fit. So I wrote a business plan while I were unemployed, and I got the funding for the company. So that's how Robotality started. So yeah.
That's an amazing journey. So tell us about the studio itself. What's the structure of it? And you are the founder or co-founder? And what's the workflow? And what software do you use?
Yeah, I'm the founder, or we were two guys founding it, brothers actually, Stefan and I. Um, we started out working on Halfway in 2013, and we were only two people at that point. During the development, we scaled up with freelancers. We had an external artist, Johan Vinet, working for us, and Gavin Harrison doing soundtrack and stuff like that. And also we had an additional programmer for AI. And also we had later on Daniel, our current programmer, joined the team. Currently we are three people because Stefan, my brother, decided to leave in the end of Halfway and go back to Australia. So he decided to leave the company again. And Daniel, the current coder, and an old friend of mine I met at Reactor back in the beginning of my development days, joined me. And Stefan Neujoks, another Reactor employee, joined me as a game designer. So we are now three people. And how is our company built up? It's quite simple. We are three members, and everybody knows everything, and we work together on our next game. So that's how it works. We have no hierarchy or anything. I mean, there are some legal rules we have to oblige. So we have to have one guy need to be the CEO, and that's me, and the other ones have an employment on paper, so that we are on the secure side from the law, but internally it doesn't make a difference. We have no hierarchy at all. We are just talking about things we and everybody knows everything. So that's how Robotelli works.
Wow, so it is very loose, and yet at the same time, you all know what you're doing, and you all know each other
Uh,
personally.
yeah, and we are Daniel and I worked for like 10 years together, and Daniel is like for 16 years or 17 years now in the industry and has a lot of experiences. And Stefan too is like 8 years in the industry, so we have and me with my 15 years are like together we have like 40, 42 years of man years experience. So we are quite a well, yeah, we work quite well together because of that, because we know each other. So that's nice.
That's quite a lot of years and a lot of experience.
Yeah.
So, tell me about Halfway itself. What did you want the player to experience at the start of the game?
Well, the game finally we released was the vision was to have a crossover of System Shock and UFO Enemy Unknown and Check the Lines. So it's like a turn-based System Shock was the original vision we had when we started developing the game. And one of the main things we wanted to having the player to feel and see is that he's completely alone and confused in the beginning and not knowing what's going on and not feeling secure anywhere. And while he progresses, he learns to be smarter than his enemies and finally can overcome the threat put to him. But always feeling not safe while playing it, and that actually was the main initial feelings and experience we wanted to have the player to go through when he plays the game.
I definitely felt some of that at the very start. I didn't fully understand what was going off. The plot was quite vague, and because the camera and all our focus is around lands,
Mm,
we really don't know what's happening in the wider spectrum of the plot and what's happening elsewhere on the spaceship, which I think really adds to that atmosphere of the unknown. And I also felt that insecurity as well because we get attacked. We get attacked while we're asleep.
exactly, and also in the home base, when you get the first home base, you get overrun by some enemies. That was not there from the beginning, but we decided to put it in to give the player the feeling it can happen everywhere. So yeah, that was really important. But still, if you are smart, you can outsmart the enemy, and that's what's important for the player.
I was a little concerned that when they attacked the the base, the sleeping tent area, that there was a permadeath and that Sam and I think the other one, Linda, would die. But no, they just seem to be a little unconscious for the rest of the level, which is fine.
Yeah, that's a game design decision we made along the development. In the beginning, we are actually planning to have permadeath in the game,
Mm,
but it's not a great idea for a story-driven game to have permadeath because
yeah.
what happens is that the player have to play the same story over and over again. So we dropped it quite soon and put in the knockout um, feature, which I think is the better solution for this game. Not for every turn-based game or every game at all. I love permadeath games really, really much, but for in this case, it was a good decision to go.
Yeah, I didn't think you would have had it because you gave the characters names and there's a plot and there was a structure behind it. So I had thought that if one dies, the story would have to branch completely different and it might be a little too complicated.
Yeah, that would be crazy. It was enough to have one story with some side quests to finish, and doing a branching story with different outcomes would be insane for such a small team like us. I mean, something guys from BioWare can do. We are not as big and not as experienced in doing branched story lines that it's actually making sense for us to do so.
Yeah, and one other thing that I liked about it was that it had that mystery, aura, and sense about it at the beginning, but it wasn't too creepy, scary, crazy. It wasn't too outlandishly alien-like. It was just like, hey, there's a misfigured character here. That's obviously enemy. Obviously enemy. Let's take him down without being too over the top or too crazy, too science fiction.
Yeah, I mean, uh, it's always a matter of taste. We also got some complaints that it was too common type of enemy. Um, I mean, if you play the game further along the way, gets some a bit stranger on the backstory of things, where the enemies come from and stuff like that. But I always have a strong feeling for that the story needs to be comprehensible or understandable for players, even if they are not into deep into sci-fi and deep into such things. So that made us cut back on craziness at some points when we wrote the story. So that at least it makes on a some level it makes sense, or it can be understand what's actually going on. So
Well, I think it works. I think it works. So, how did you go about promoting the game? And what strategies worked for your game? And what did not work as well?
um, that's an interesting question. We decided to quite early on in the development. We decided on to actually go with a publisher, helping us with the promotion. So we teamed up with Chucklefish from Starbound. Um, they're known for Starbound and 10 other games they are currently publishing. And they are a little bit different than a usual publisher, because actually they are a game developer who decided that they can help other developers with promoting their games. And they are really, really nice to work with. And I can really recommend that. And they helped us to get the right people known. So, like press, like YouTuber, like Twitchers and stuff like that. And that was one of the main promotion line we did. And the other one was that we, from the beginning on, or early on from the development, we started to do development blogs and using social medias to promote our game even before it was released. So yeah, that worked quite well, I think, for what we achieved. But I think we can still improve on every aspect of promoting the game, because you can never be marketing and promotion can never be enough. So that's always a weak point, at least on our side, and on tons of other indie games and indie studios. I think they are underestimating the possibility or the amount of work it needs to be done to promote the game.
Yeah, you don't want, well, no amount of marketing will make a bad game look good.
No, you need a good game, but a good
Hmm.
game alone is not enough to actually make a success. It's really uncommon that just a good game and no promotion make you a living out of the game. So it's always both. You need always both.
So, what, when it came to promotion, did not work so well?
Oh well, I mean, it's not one point. I would say that's it. But one thing we saw is that a single player, story driven, turn-based game doesn't really work well with a Twitcher, live streamers of the game. It was hard to get us on Twitch channels because they prefer uh, often they prefer games like yeah, like games like Nuclear Throne or other action games that have a lot of crazy going on, and you have something entertaining to show. We had some great YouTubers actually, and also some great Twitcher, but there I think we could have uh, been better and better placed. But I mean, we are learning, so that,
That's that's quite understandable, yet quite a little unexpected that single player games, story driven, don't seem to be very popular on Twitch.
at least
I can
turn-based, I think. I mean, uh, we are a really small game compared to. I mean, if it's XCOM, everybody loves XCOM and is playing it actually, but it has a lot of random factors in it and surprises, and it's you can play it over and over again. Our game is like a story going on, and when you are finished, you are finished, you know. And so we had
Hmm.
like Twitchers playing the game completely through, and then that was it. So I think it's just one thing. I think we have everywhere we can improve on social medias. We can improve on more press coverage and stuff like that. It's really hard to say what actually works and what not. We had some great reviews, and they actually had no impact at all on sales. Also, we had great YouTuber making videos, and they had no impact on sales. And then we had one short article on Kotaku about a video another YouTuber made, and that had a huge impact on sales. So it's really it's a little bit of luck and magic and trying to um, do as much as you can and hope something sticks.
Do as much as you can and hope something sticks. Yes. So the way I see it is adding value.
Yeah, yeah, sure, definitely. I mean, without a great game, you can completely, yeah. I mean, you cannot, at least as indie, you cannot promote it to be golden suddenly. So you have to have a decent game at least. And I mean, out of my view, Halfway has some flaws in its game design and has some issues later on also. And I think if we had an even better game, it would be easier to actually sell it than the current game we have. So, but that is me as a developer being very critical about what we have achieved with our game. So it's normal.
Mm-hmm. Well, speaking of the game, what was cut from it and why?
Oh, yeah. Um, we cut down some of. Uh, in the beginning, the game was far more complex when it comes to game mechanics, and we completely cut it down to a way simpler turn-based system. In the beginning, it was way more like check the lines, so where you could actually put your characters on the ground and or kneel and have way more complex system of being in cover and stuff like that. But during the development, we just had a point where we saw that it's not fun. It's actually not fun because the player has a hard time to understand what's going on and why he hit and why he missed and stuff like that. So one thing was that we quite heavily simplified the game mechanic and made it easier to understand, and that was one thing. And the other thing that we scoped down was the story. The initial story designs were far more bigger in any case, but it would be impossible to finish. So we took like a third of the initial story and decided that's the part we are actually going to tell. And if the game is a big enough success, we are going to do at some point the second part of the story. And if not, then the story itself is enough to have a full game. So that's the main things. And I mean, you always cut stuff that just doesn't fit in or that you think you don't have time anymore to do because you want to release the game, stuff like that. But there are smaller things. So I think that's the two main things.
Wow. So if you'd kept it all in, you thought the game would not be fun and too complicated and arguably too big as well. You mentioned like a third of the story, so you had a lot more in mind and a lot more things to come, but it was just too much for the player.
Yeah, exactly. We have actually story and background story and stuff like that for at least two other games in that universe. So, and halfway actually is already 12 hours long to play. And so, you know, it's doing a story driven game is so much work on art and on writing and on level design part that yeah, it was the best decision to make the story to split the story up in pieces to actually finish the game. We wouldn't be
So
yet.
so we can expect a sequel, like say a full way or I don't know, halfway to.
um, we currently have no direct plans to directly work on a sequel. Our next game
Okay.
will be a turn-based game again, but
Mm-hmm.
it will play in a complete different universe and a complete different setting. But we will announce that at some other point when we have some things to show. So I think halfway player will be really happy when they see what we are working on. But it will not be a direct sequel because we needed to have a break from the game after we released it, and that was the reason why we decided to go on besides other things to go with a different scenario.
I understand. That's pretty cool. So, Simon, what was the biggest thing you learned while working on the game?
Oh, um, yeah. I mean, how should I say? Yeah, one of the biggest thing is maybe that it's it's good to cut down some parts and make things simpler than you initially have planned. So the thing I said earlier on that we made the game mechanics way simpler than it was initially was one of the best decisions we made while we are developing the game. So I would say that on the game design side, it's definitely keep it simple and always think about can I use an existing mechanic or an existing way to do it and extend it so the player doesn't have to learn a complete new system or that you have to explain a completely new system. So that's one thing I think we really have taken from doing halfway and while doing halfway. Um, I would say on halfway side, when I'm critic again on my own game, we could have add some more complexity in the end, but we just didn't have the time to do it. So I would do some things a little bit more complex again than we had done in halfway. But overall, it's a good thing to keep things simple. So
Yes, there's a quote that is something on the lines of if you're going for clear or clever, the best one to go for is clear as opposed to clever.
yeah, or at least it can be clever. Sometimes clear is also clever because you're using resources and stuff you already have. So if you have if you explain the player a base gameplay mechanic and the next one building up on it, it's way easier to explain the player because he already learned the step before. So always think about how you can keep things yeah simple. Yeah.
Simple,
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah.
So, what was the worst thing that happened, and how did you overcome it?
Yeah, well, it's also it has to do with this complexity thing. As it was like 6 months in development when Stefan and I sat together in a pub in London, and we were drinking a beer and said, "Damn, the game is no fun. Um, it's really no fun. It's not playing as we thought it was. We have put in like 6 months. We had our freelancers working on everything, and we had just the feeling that the game will never be fun. And we were thinking about actually dropping the game and starting over from scratch. So luckily we didn't do that. But what we did was after the second or third beer, we decided to um, go back to the roots, remove all art assets and all graphics, and do another prototype which just uses placeholder art and where we try to simplify the whole turn-based game mechanic massively until it's fun again. And it took us like 2 months to do these prototypes and play over it and refine it and rework it and rethink it. And after about 2 months, I'm not 100% sure anymore. We decided we had a prototype again, which was like really ugly, but the game was fun again. And then it was quite easy actually to just put on the art and stuff again, and it was still fun. And that helped quite a lot to remove everything what was shiny and what was distracting from the actual problem of the gameplay. And that saved the project in the end.
That's great to hear. You simplified it and you had that critical analysis to say the game's not fun. That's really cool. So, what was the best game dev purchase you made? Whether it was a software license, top quality piece of hardware or equipment, or it could simply be a comfortable chair and a good desk.
Oh well, there are lots of good things we bought during the development time. So I mean, I can only speak for from my side for level design and art I did and the story writing. One of the most important things for me as artist was the Cintiq from Wacom. I bought a 30-inch Cintiq which is really, really awesome for doing pixel art. And on the software side, it's the graphics tool Pixel Edit, which is a pixel graphics tool that came out in end of 2013, I think, which is really awesome for doing pixel art and 2D tile sets and stuff like that. It's awesome. I can just recommend it. It saved my life for like 100 times while doing halfway.
Wait, pixel edit. So how would that work? Because when it comes to 2D sprites, I imagine that for static imagery, very easy. But when it comes to animating the sprites, it could be quite tedious.
Yeah, I think, I mean, the animation were done by another artist than me, were done by Johan Vinet, and he used Photoshop for that. And I can really not recommend using Photoshop. It's really a nightmare for doing animations, but he's used to it, so it's okay. Pixel Edit, since the free version, since he made the paid version, he really improved on the animation part of it, and I actually love it to do animations with Pixel Edit now because it's such an intuitive way to do it. At least for me. I mean, everybody is different in this case, but I really love Pixel Edit for doing animation.
And what was the other one you mentioned? You mentioned like a screen or something.
Yeah, it's a Cintiq HD13, which is a graphics tablet with a built-in monitor, which is done by Wacom. It's a pen display, you know.
Is that the one where like the monitor is on the desk and you like write onto the computer screen?
Exactly. Only that it's not
Ah,
the 70-inch version, but the 13-inch version, which costs, I think, now around $800 or something like that. So,
I see. Very worthwhile investment then.
yeah, totally. It's really, really great to work with.
And speaking of working with, do you have any game development related book, lecture, or learning resource that you can recommend?
Oh, well, yeah, I mean, I can recommend Google. Google is really great for finding resources. But when it comes to a art book, it's actually one that's not really related to computer graphics, but
Even better.
it's perfect for art itself, and it's Color and Light by James Gournay, or how it's called. He did Dinotopia, and this book is about how you mix colors, and or how he explains about how color and light interacts, and how you paint light, and how you do colors, and how you mix colors to achieve some effects. And it's really awesome, especially if you are doing pixel art. This is really in my opinion, a must-have for every aspiring artist.
Who is it by again? Because that sounds familiar.
James, I don't know how his name is spelled. Gournay, or
Yes, I remember that book. Is it like a photo book? Because there's loads of pictures and drawings that he's made
yeah, yeah,
of like dinosaurs and environments.
exactly.
Yes, I remember that
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
Yes, I remember that. Yeah, definitely. I can recommend that as well.
This is awesome. He has also done another book. I just ordered. I don't have it. It's this thing's imaginative realism or something like that. So he's really, I really can recommend his books. He's really an eye opener by explaining stuff so simple and so to the point. It's really, really great.
Yeah, I remember reading that a few years ago, like a year or something ago. Yes, that was very good. Yes, and speaking of very good, Simon, like an Evernote or a Trello, do you have a useful or productivity enhancing software, app, extension, or website worth sharing?
Yeah, well, we work with stuff from Atlassian or Atlassian. We have as internal Wikipedia, we use Confluence, which is really awesome. And they have an independent license for studios below 10 people. You can have their license for €10 a year if you are hosting it for yourself. And they have also a cheat client or a cheat version that's called Source Tree, Source, no Source Tree, yeah, Source Tree, and the website of it, which is called Stash. We really love that because it makes your life quite easy on communicating with each other, keeping stuff on a central server and such things. So I can really recommend everything from Atlassian what they do.
That is great. And speaking of recommend, what advice can you give to aspiring game developers, small indie studios, and people trying to get to where you are today?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's always an individual thing to do, but if I have to be general, I would say start really small, do a lot of games, because no game developer that actually makes a living out of his games has only done one game, but they have done dozens of games or at least 10 or something. So do small, fail fast, and do it again and again, and learn from your mistakes. And for that, game jams are really great. We did also a lot of game jams just to have a feeling for what works and what not. And yeah, I think start small and do a lot of games and release them actually to the public and get feedback. And that's really hard and it's really harsh, but do it because it's so much worth, even more than trying to do the perfect game in the first way. It won't work that way.
Wow, I love that. Fail fast. That is great advice. Yeah, and the way I see it is if you want to make games and you want to be a game developer, make games and develop games. It's like if you want to be a writer, write. If you want to be an interviewer, interview. If you want to be XYZ, do XYZ. So if you want to be a game developer, make games.
Exactly. I mean, also what is important if you are doing independent is don't forget the business side. It's important. It's really important because a lot of indies think just I want to be creative and I want to do games and I don't care about business because that's not what I want to do. But if you want to do a living out of it, business is a part of it, and that's where the money lies. And don't forget it. It's important, really.
Yeah, and I get you. I've known a few people who are into indie development, but they don't like money, don't like talking about it, and don't want to be involved in the business side. And they don't fully realize that that is what a company does. They enrich people's lives, entertain other people, and they get rewarded for that in direct proportion to their service that they provide.
Exactly, and it makes it possible that I can continue, or we as a team can continue to do what we love, games independently. So it's a win-win situation, but it's also a part of the business, part of the thing I do not like myself, but it's a necessary part. So I try to start to like it. So yeah,
Yes.
try to
Yeah,
do the best what you can with it. So it's really important.
exactly. So, what is next for you, Simon? And what's the best way that we can contact you?
Yeah, next we are working on our next game. We hope to announce very, very soon, so no spoilers here. You can reach us everywhere. We are on Twitter under Robotality. You can find us on Facebook, also on Robotality. We have a website at robotality.com, and drop us an email, drop us a comment, whatever you want. We are answering. We are happy to help also aspiring developers if they have questions and stuff. We are really happy to help because we are here because other people helped us, and that's what we also do.
Well, it appears, Simon, that we're out of time for this episode of Daily Dev Talk. It was great talking to you and plenty to think about. I wish you well on future endeavours and this, especially this new game that's yet to be announced.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me. It was a great talking with you.
Stay tuned, Overload Nation. More Daily Dev Talks to come. Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Daily Dev Talk with me, Adrian Nantchev. If you are a game developer that wants to get your name and game out there and to share your experiences and stories, or you have feedback or opinions of the show, then contact me at info@gameoverload.co.uk. That's info@gameoverload.co.uk. Stay tuned for tomorrow's episode. More to come.